What is going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Fantasy Slant, brought to you by Pro Football Focus and powered by Pro Football Focus at this time, too. I think we're looking for a sponsor, so if you want to sponsor the show, get in here right now. But no, I'm joined by some fantastic guests today. We got a full house. My name is Mike Tagliere. I'll be hosting the show. We are all with PFF. We have an analyst on the show. We have a writer and we have an editor. So we got like everything here. Brandon Marianne Lee. Brandon, you want to say hello?
Hello.
And make sure to follow me on Twitter. If you guys want to go ahead and give away your Twitter handles when I introduce you, Brandon, you are at Brandon Her FFB. Is that right?
Correct, as in Her Fantasy Football.
There you go. Daniel Kelley, my editor, he's on the show, so he can't edit me throughout this. This is all live. Daniel, how you holding up?
Oh, I'll find a way. I'm good. If you want my Twitter handle, it's at Daniel T. Kelley, and that's with an EY. And I need more followers, so get in there.
There you go. Do it. He's pretty funny. I will say that. The guy just got married not long ago, and he's made me chuckle a few times. And then we got Nathan Jahnke. I got it right, didn't I, Nathan?
Yep, you got it right this time.
Hey.
And then Twitter handle PFF_Nate Jahnke. That's PFF_NATEJAHNKE.
Yeah, Nathan is the one who's out there tweeting all the snap counts, letting you know who's on the field, when they're on the field. And one player that is off the field now is Jay Cutler. News just rolled in a couple minutes ago that he has torn ligaments in his hand. So Jay is on the shelf. And I know we just started talking amongst ourselves for a moment. So I guess we were going to start off with quarterbacks anyway. So I think now is as good a time as any. Is Brian Hoyer worth a speculative ad? Let's start with you, Brandon.
No. Well, unless you're in a two-quarterback league, of course, because everyone's worth a speculative ad. And I'm going to have to do that in the Scott Fishbowl League, which has 480 people in it, including experts and fans. I had Tony Romo and Teddy Bridgewater. And for some reason, everyone went in and bid the first week on quarterbacks like mad. So I didn't get anyone. I still had Bridgewater and Romo on my team. So it's a two-quarterback league.
Oh, gross.
I'm going to have to get Hoyer. Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, what? Why are you overspending on a quarterback? Anyway, it's fine. It's just one league. But yeah, if you're in a desperate situation, sure. Otherwise, this is really about Alshon Jeffrey, Jeremy Langford to a much smaller, event. But I think that Alshon Jeffrey will be fine. I think that's the main thing. DeAndre Hopkins was fine. He'll sling the ball, but he'll turn it over.
Yes, no, Daniel was saying that before we got going. He was saying that, DeAndre Hopkins was fine last year. We'll see if the volume's there under John Fox. I tend to think that they're going to try and go run heavy and hide the quarterback position because they weren't even throwing very much with Cutler. Let's be honest. I don't want to spend too much
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this destroys the value for Zach Miller.
Yeah.
Nobody underneath in Houston last year did anything under Hoyer. So I think I had Miller as a sleeper candidate, but I think this kills him. I think he's done for anything other than super deep leagues.
Yeah, and he wasn't even really doing much beforehand. Like, even with Cutler, they weren't involving the tight end very much. I think this offense changed so much when they lost Adam Gase. I think it was underestimated, the fact that how much when John Fox was brought into Chicago, I wanted to know, I'm a Bears fan. I wanted to ask other Bears fans, what makes John Fox special? Like, what makes you think that he's going to bring us anything? Because, he came from Denver, and I'm sorry for this rant here, but he came from Denver. He had Gase under him. He had Peyton Manning. He was a 500 coach the entire time in Carolina. Like, for me, John Fox is a little overrated, but we're not here to talk about coaches. We're here to talk about players. Another quarterback that I think you could have an ad this week, and I think he is an ad. I don't think it's speculative. I think you should add him. He's got a fantastic matchup, and that's Ryan Tannehill. Nathan, let's go to you. Ryan Tannehill, he may have not have been great as an actual quarterback last week, but for fantasy purposes, Ryan Tannehill was pretty decent, right?
Oh, yeah, Ryan Tannehill, he's someone who, as long as his wide receivers are doing right by him, he is a good player. He actually graded out very well this past week. And he's someone where there have been games where you watch his top 2-3 throws and it's plays where the wide receiver drops it or there's a penalty on someone completely unrelated to the throw. So as long as things are going right, he's a good player. He had a ton of yards this past week. And it showed in his play, too. He played well. So I think he's someone that this upcoming week can do very well.
Yeah, no, and the Browns now have allowed multiple touchdown passes in 14 of their last 18 games. That's who we'll be going up against this week. And he'll be doing so without Arian Foster. We're going to talk about the running back position in a moment. But first,
Don't do it. Tannehill's a trap.
Oh, stop it.
No, I'm serious, you guys. It's
Brandon
unbelievable.
Hates Ryan Tannehill. She hates Ryan Tannehill.
No, you guys, I'm just telling you, he is terrible in good matchups and good in bad matchups. This is his thing. Last year, New England, week 17, he scored 23.7 points, okay? One of the top fantasy quarterbacks the last time he faced New England. Great divisional opponent. They figured it out. Congratulations. Indianapolis, their defense stunk last year, 14 points. Baltimore, remember how bad they were? 8 points. Buffalo, also bad last year. 9 points. I'm telling you. But then when he went up against the Jets, 23 points. He is the worst whack-a-mole fantasy quarterback. He is just, I mean, it's just, I'm telling you, it's a trap. It's a trap. It is every year. The year before that, remember everyone was starting him against the Jets in DFS, and then he got 7 points. You guys, I'm sorry. Anyone who could only you could only put up 86 yards on Baltimore's defense last season? No, thank you. No, this is who he is every year.
All right, so we know how Brandon feels about Ryan Tannehill. I'm gonna while we move to the next topic, I'm gonna look at something on Ryan Tannehill. But Daniel, I want you to talk about Joe Flacco. I know a lot of people picked him up this week to start him against those Browns. Is he someone worth holding on to with the emergence of, Mike Wallace now in his offense? You got Rashad Perriman playing more snaps. The odd man out here is Kamar Aiken, but, it seems like there's receiving options here. And then, Justin Forsett can catch the ball in the backfield. Dennis Pitta. Is Joe Flacco somebody that can be, an every week starter?
I wouldn't be using him like that. Receiving options has never been the problem for Flacco except for last season. He always had Anquan Bolden, Torrey Smith, Dennis Pitta before his hip exploded, and he's had the guys there, and he's never had a 4,000-yard season. He's never thrown for 30 touchdowns. He's fine. If you're in a pinch, I don't mind using him as a QB2 or a streamer, but keeping him every week, I don't see the point in that.
I agree. There's that many quarterbacks for me that I'm okay with starting every single week, that they're matchup proof and this and that. Flacco's definitely not one of them for me, but it is interesting to see what he can do with these options because, Mike Wallace appears to be back, on the fantasy radar. I did have a piece coming out that came out today, actually talking about Mike Wallace and your expectations, what they should be going forward and how I would be selling high on him. And I know he fits Flacco's skill set to a T, but, there's reason for me to believe with his limited targets that he has seen, and I don't think it grows as the season goes on, that his ceiling right now is a wide receiver 3, and with the numbers he's already produced, he's in for some regression. So, this week, we talked about a couple quarterbacks, but let's be honest, this is a big week for running backs. This is for the zero running back truthers out there. You got your wish, that all the starting running backs are hurt in the league, it seems like. So a lot of our time today is going to be spent on the running back position and finding out which ones you believe are the ones that, should be the top ads. So let's start with Brandon. Brandon, Kenneth Dixon is someone that I've gotten a lot of questions about recently. They're like, should I add him now? Should he be someone that I put on my fantasy team just in anticipation of him coming back? Looking at the Baltimore backfield, Forsett and West, 3.25 yards per carry, 3.22. They're not getting it done. Neither of them have a run over 11 yards. They're not doing anything back there. This has to be Dixon's job when he gets healthy, right?
I would like to say have to, but Baltimore's entire depth chart's been a mystery the entire offseason. During the season, it's just a joke. Did Kamar Aiken disappear? We don't know what's happening with that guy. I would think so, but the problem is there's so many injuries. I'm not quite sure a lot of people can hold on to him the way that they can. Now, if you're in a deep league, he's not available. This is the problem. You're either in a shallow league, you have very few people playing with you, and he's available and you don't have the room on your bench, or you're in a deep league and he's already taken. So I just don't know if there's a scenario where you can get him right now. But sure, yeah, I think he definitely is one of those guys that has upside. But again, it's a couple weeks away, at least.
Well, that's the thing is, so basically, I think sometimes in the industry, we take for granted that people would own players. But here's the thing. So in the industry leagues, it depends on how deep the benches are. I played the Flex League that we play in, Brandon, you're in a different one than me this year, but Kenneth Dixon was not owned. He'll be a big waiver wire ad because the benches, I think it's only a 5-man bench in a 12-team league, so it's really shallow. Kenneth Dixon, I do believe he's worth a speculative ad. This Ravens offense kind of needs a spark, and Justin Forsett, he should have been left cut where he was. I don't know why they brought him back.
Do you have space? I mean, my question is, if you only have 5 roster spots, there's so many studs that people are going to have to bench because they just have not performed. There are people that are injured that are only going to be out a couple weeks. So that's my thing is if it's only a 5-person bench, it's going to be hard to add him now and hold him for multiple weeks based off of the injuries and performances that we're having.
Right.
But maybe, absolutely, if you can, great.
Nathan, what's the snap count looking like there? Like, what do you think is going on between this running back? Do you think it's going to be a committee, or do you kind of see Dixon running with the job?
I think at least to start off with, it'll be a committee. I think running back in Baltimore, regardless of who it is, starts doing well. I think they'll end up seeing the majority of the carries. But until someone is able to start standing out, I think it's going to be a committee. Carries distributed a lot among all the guys.
Yeah, and Daniel, you're the tiebreaker here. What do you think? Do you think he's worth an ad in leagues, or do you think that, maybe he just is part of committee and that you should try and avoid it, maybe not spend all of your free agent acquisition budget on him?
Yeah, I wouldn't blow my budget by any means on him. It's interesting, since we've been talking about it, I just went and looked. In every league I have that is 12 teams or fewer, Dixon's available. In every league that's 14 teams or more, he's taken. So it's a pretty sharp distinction there. I think he's totally a speculative ad. If you can spend a few bucks, go ahead. But if it's going to cost you anything, it's just not worth it. That situation could be murky all year long, and until we know a little more, you're just asking for it by blowing your budget on him.
Yeah, no. Well, then that leads us into another question about a free agent acquisition by budget. Now, this player, I was shocked to hear he's available in so many leagues. We had Adrian Peterson go down in the Sunday night game. It's unfortunate. We don't know if Adrian Peterson has hit the wall in his career. He was averaging under 2 yards per carry when he went down. Now he's got a torn meniscus. Now, they're not ruling him out for this week, but I am. Okay, he's not playing. I'm ruling him out. Adrian Peterson's not playing this week. But the question is who's going to replace him? That's the biggest thing that everybody wants to know. And will it matter? The reason I say that is will it matter because the Vikings running backs, all 3 of them, Asiata, McKinnon, Peterson, all of them have averaged less than 1 yard before contact or when contact takes place. So therefore, they're going to struggle to even get 3.5 yards per carry when they're starting. So for me, Jerick McKinnon is the name that stands out as the most talented back. But is he someone that we can really trust, Brandon?
No, I mean, I keep hearing that, but Matt Asiata continues to outproduce him. I mean, I know that the, narrative is that he's the guy, but I don't know if that's true. And if history proves itself correct, Matt Asiata is famous for being a touchdown vulture. That's his gig. That's his lot in life. And here's the thing, he's owned in almost 0% of leagues. In a lot of my deep leagues, he's actually one of my ads because I have a Jonathan Stewart problem. I have, many a problem, frankly, in some of these running back situations, like a lot of you. So listen, Jerick McKinnon was drafted a lot higher than him. He is available in a lot of leagues, again, if you're in a smaller league. But yeah, that offensive line, I just wrote about it today. I believe that it's 3 out of the 5 of them have ranked in the bottom of their position over the last 2 weeks. And that was written up by one of our, when they did the matchup. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. The matchup article. And I thought that was just shocking. I was like, what? That's just unbelievable. So I think that, I think that we have a real offensive line problem. And frankly, it sounds crazy, but I think this offense runs through Stephon Diggs. So I think it's changing.
If there's one thing to take from this show, Brandon, I want to quote that and get it tattooed across me. I have a Jonathan Stewart problem. That is the line that I want everyone to take from this show. I think we all have a Jonathan Stewart problem.
When you went 0 RB, he seemed like such a deal.
He's so dumb. I don't even want to talk about Stewart. Anyways, so all right. So Brandon doesn't like Jerick McKinnon. I'm leaning on the side that I own McKinnon in a lot of places. I think he's better in an exotic offense, which means I felt like he was going to be better with Teddy Bridgewater out of the shotgun, running formations like that. With Sam Bradford not so used to this offense, I have my concerns there. I think they want to keep it standard for him until he gets a grasp on things. So I do think it's going to be a timeshare, unfortunately. But Jerick McKinnon, there were 5 games last year in which he saw 5 or more carries. In those games, he averaged 5.5 yards per carry. But keep in mind, guys, Jerick McKinnon has 170 career carries, 2 touchdowns, and both of them came in 1 game. That's because Matt Asiata is a touchdown vulture. Speaking of Jonathan Stewart problem, we have to figure out who to start behind him. Is it Fozzie Whitaker? Is it Cameron Artis-Payne? Cameron Artis-Payne is the guy who saw 33 carries. Someone's taking a phone call.
Sorry about that.
Tell them we'll call him back. Okay, so 33 carries for Cameron Artis-Payne when Jonathan Stewart went down in weeks 15 through 17, and then we had Fozzie Whitaker had 7. So it wasn't a lot. But with Fozzie Whitaker's performance in week 2, is he someone that we have to take seriously? Let's start with Daniel.
If you need someone to start in week 3, I don't see how you can go anywhere but Whitaker out of that backfield. But long term, I would absolutely be leaning toward Artis-Payne. He's got more talent. Fozzie Whitaker's been around for, God, forever. And this is his first big shot other than, what, he have 3 games with the Browns in like 2012. Yeah. He's going to get the first crack this week and maybe for a couple weeks if Stewart's out for a while. But if I'm stashing someone long term looking ahead, it's going to be Artis-Payne. I think he's just got more talent.
Well, they're saying that it's possible that, the Panthers are concerned about Jonathan Stewart's injuries. They've been concerned. I don't know how they didn't prepare for this. I think they felt like Artis-Payne can fill that role. And I actually tend to agree with the Panthers here. The reason that Cameron Artis-Payne was inactive, Nathan, I hope you could back me up on this. And if I'm wrong, tell me. But the reason that he was inactive is because they needed the players for special teams. I think the reason that Fozzie Whitaker got as much play as he did in week 2 was because it was out of necessity, that they didn't really have anybody else. I think Tolbert got nicked up too. They didn't really have anybody else. I'm on board with Cameron Artis-Payne here. I think that he's the one that's going to see more touches just because he's more built as the workhorse, with Fozzie Whitaker as the change of pace. But you tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll echo everything that you guys have been saying with this. I think Whitaker, while he had a good game this past week, over the course of his career, he just hasn't been that strong of a running back. Just 2 yards after contact per attempt in his career, which isn't very good. So I think even this upcoming week, Artis-Payne might be the guy. So he'd be the player I'd add. I probably wouldn't start him this upcoming week unless we hear more between now and the start of the game. But I think if there's a player between the two to add, it's Artis-Payne.
That's where I'm at with it too. So I don't think I could start either of them one comfortably this week, but it's something to monitor. Although I think they're playing the Bears. Am I right? I think it might be the Bears this week, and that's bad news for everybody. Bad news, Bears. One player who was dropped in actually more than a couple leagues, because I was looking at the percentages and I couldn't believe how unowned he was. Jay Ajayi. He might get a shot here, guys. We knew that Arian Foster, he probably wouldn't hold up, unfortunately, because I've had a blast watching Arian Foster throughout his career. He's one of the funnest players to watch, but he's out, and he's probably going to miss some time here. Is this Jay Ajayi's backfield by default, Brandon, or are you more like, I think it's going to be a timeshare that I don't want a piece of?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a timeshare. I don't think they believe in Jay Ajayi. I think they have a lot of problems with him, and I think Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams are at least 2 guys that they want to see what they have at this point. They've made a pretty bold statement with Jay Ajayi. And Jay Ajayi doesn't exactly have the greatest injury history either. He doesn't have a kneecap. So I think that, when you look at what's going to happen there, sure, if he's available this week, yes. Long term, I think this is a murky situation. And as we know by Adam Gase, he doesn't care about his running backs. He'll share the load. He does not need a stud running back. That is not his game. So, listen, this is what happens when you're on the waiver wire. It's all kind of dicey situations. And I think Miami's as dicey as they come. And, they played well in New England once they were down to a rookie third string running or quarterback and got some gusto behind them. But I don't know, you guys. I think it's going to be tough sailing for whoever is in that backfield.
Now, for me, okay, so this is going to be a fun one because we're gonna have to do tiebreakers here. Because for me, if you're looking for a running back to start this week in place of someone like an Adrian Peterson or Jonathan Stewart, I am liking Jay Ajayi. I think he's a fantastic play against the Browns. I think they're going to run the ball an awful lot, a lot more than they've been. Kenyon Drake he's still a rookie. He's a passing down guy. I think it was just more of necessity using him last week. Damian Williams, we've seen him the last couple of years. He's nothing special. I honestly don't think that Damian Williams would have made the team if they didn't worry about injuries so much with Ajayi and Foster. They won't stop calling.
Sorry, I can't quiet that phone. I'm in an office. I didn't know it was going to be going off.
It's all right. So, all right. So, Daniel, let's go to you before they call you. Jay Ajayi, is he someone that you would start this week if you were able to get your hands on him?
Why would you do it to yourself? They clearly don't like Jay Ajayi, and if the team doesn't like him, I mean, isn't that a pretty strong indication? They may be forced to use him, but they're going to try to avoid it as much as they can. Tannehill runs the ball some. They're going to be throwing a lot this week, as we already said. If I'm in a pinch, if I had Woodhead as my starter and I don't have anybody as a backup, sure, you're going to have to.
Sure.
But, man, if I can avoid it, I'll avoid it.
All right. So we got 2-1. So we got Brandon and Daniel on one side. We got me on an island by myself. Nathan, do you want to join me on this island that is Jay Ajayi, or are you staying on land?
Yeah, we're going to need to find a fifth person to join us on these podcasts because I'm joining you on the island. I think even though the Dolphins don't like him, it's not like they like any of their other running backs they have on the roster better right now. And if there's one matchup that'll do well, it's against Cleveland. It'll be a game where Miami is hopefully winning late, so they'll be running late, which means more carries, more yards. And Ajayi is also the receiving back among the group unless Damian Williams is active and then takes a much bigger role than what he's had when he was inactive this past week. So I think I'm just as confident he'll get carries and touches as any other running back that we've been talking about this upcoming week. So short term, I think Ajayi is the guy, and I'm not as sure long term, but definitely this week.
I agree with that.
I'll say that I like Ajayi on talent
yeah.
level.
Oh,
I like Ajayi's talent. Watching him last year, I enjoyed watching him. I thought he was going to be a good player, but the team just hates him. And if the team's going to hate on him like that, I don't know why we should be investing.
I think this week against the Browns, you start anyone. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Don't get me wrong, but the guy's only scored 10 or more fantasy points once, and no one likes him. So, listen, I'm just saying, long term, I'm hoping someone else becomes available. I'm not quite sure, but against the Browns, sure, I'd start anyone.
Brandon's my favorite. She gets a star for this show so far. But speaking of stars, we're gonna have a word from Chris Collinsworth right now. All right, guys. So we have one more running back that we want to touch on in between all of this. And it's one that I think is going under the radar. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, in deeper leagues. But I think he could be more than that. I think that Dwayne Washington out of Detroit is an actual legit chance to contribute as a flex player on your fantasy team. And even if we're talking about 12-team leagues, I don't know about 10-team leagues because those are just stacked regardless. But Dwayne Washington's walking into a role where Amir Abdullah and him accounted for 29 touches over the first 2 weeks. I don't think Zach Zenner all of a sudden takes over Amir Abdullah's role. Theo Riddick is going to keep doing Theo Riddick things. He's fine. But he's only going to carry the ball 5 to 7 times a game. We know that the Lions want to run a pass-first offense. They're that West Coast scheme where it's just quick hitting. But in the NFL, to win games, you have to be able to run the ball. So, Nathan, let's start with you. Dwayne Washington, what do you think?
I think he's worth an add if it's a big enough league that you have room on your bench for him. But I think he's someone who has a really impressive on the very small sample size that he's played on. So I'd like to see him get a bigger look. I think with Theo Riddick, he did get 11 carries this past week, so I wouldn't be surprised if Riddick does get a bigger role in the rushing game if Abdullah is out for some time. But I think Washington, he's been getting some of the carries. I think he's been playing well. So if you have a running back who's playing well out of this group, might as well take a lottery ticket on him.
No, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's like if you're hurting, and honestly, there's a lot of people in fantasy football right now hurting at the running back position. Daniel, what's your take on Dwayne Washington? Do you think – my personal take is I think he takes on the Joique Bell role. I just think that that's the only role he can take right now.
First off, why doesn't Joique Bell have a job?
I don't know. He's Chris.
He wasn't great.
He's actually Chris Ivory. I'm not kidding. Him and Chris Ivory are almost the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow.
But okay, neither here nor there. I would rather start Dwayne Washington than Jay Ajayi if we're going to be talking that way, assuming Abdullah's out, all that. But if Abdullah's out this week, I would be happy starting Dwayne Washington. I don't think they're going to give that many carries to Theo Riddick. I love Theo Riddick, but getting that many carries is asking for him to either be bad or be hurt. So I think Washington is going to get a lot of run this week if Abdullah's out, and I'd be fine using him as a flex play or a desperation RB2.
What do you think, Brandon?
The minute they gave Theo Riddick that contract, I said, congratulations, zero RB friends. Congratulations. I mean, they've been using him a lot more. I'm a little worried there, but I think Dwayne Washington's an interesting player. I just, this coaching staff was very honest with us and said they don't have any intention of anyone ending the season with over 1,000 yards. So that means a committee. I think that, we can take them at their word. And so far they've been pretty accurate, but, you're hoping that one of them gets in the end zone. They're at Green Bay. Green Bay's been struggling on the offensive side of the ball, but on defense, they haven't been that bad. And I think that they're probably feeling feisty at this point because there are a lot of question marks about the team. So I'm a little worried about this divisional matchup. They're not usually good in Lambeau, let's put it that way. So I'm worried about that. But then they're at Chicago. It's just really about how hurt Amir Abdullah is. So I would put in minimal money for Dwayne Washington at this point, like very minimal, and then watch that injury report and see really how hurt Amir Abdullah is. Again, he's not ruled out yet. I'm not convinced that he's necessarily going to be out per se, and I'm certainly not convinced it's going to be more than 1 week.
Well, he went to go see a Lisfranc specialist, and that's never a good thing when you're talking about a foot sprain, especially someone like him that relies so much on his cuts and his quickness. Like, I worry about Amir Abdullah right now. But Dwayne Washington, I don't think you have to spend big money to get him. I think there's so many other big names going on at running back right now that we've kind of already talked about that are going to take precedent there. So I think you can get him for cheap, like a really small bid, and I think you'll be able to put Dwayne Washington there and see how things line up. Like you said, the Packers have been really good against the run. Then they get the Bears after that, and they have the Rams 2 weeks later. So the schedule is not ideal. But just like if you need a running back on your bench just to fill a spot, maybe Danny Woodhead got hurt, something like that. That kind of wraps up the running backs. Is there any other running backs that are on your guys' radar that you wanted to mention that you feel like are worth an ad, or did we pretty much cover everybody?
I think we got it.
I'll say one, and this is somebody who was owned earlier and probably should still be owned, but he's only in about a third of the leagues, and that's Bilal Powell. He hasn't been used heavily so far, but they can't keep up this usage rate on Matt Forte. They just can't. He'll break into pieces. So Powell is going to see more use later in the season. And if you're in a bind, I think he could be a stash.
Yeah, I debated putting Matt Forte on my sell high list this week just because there is no way. There's almost no running back can withstand that beating. It made no sense, really, for them to use him as much as they did in that game. Bilal Powell's fine. Before the season, I said that it was stupid to consider Bilal Powell as anything more than a handcuff and a change of pace guy, but he's not even that. He's like literally D'Angelo Williams to Le'Veon Bell when Le'Veon Bell is on the field, which is just crazy to me. Brandon, do you have anybody to add, or you think we touched on everybody?
I do not think Bilal Powell is D'Angelo Williams.
No, I mean, I'm saying like in regards to touches, I think D'Angelo Williams is better. I'm talking about
But
touches.
I will say that, we said the same thing about Darren McFadden last year with Dallas, that they can't keep using him that way. 29 touches sometimes in a game. That was crazy. It was nuts. But he still made it all 16 and still was one of the top fantasy running backs in the league. I think sometimes we count these guys out. Matt Forte looks very healthy. I'm not, Bilal Powell handcuff. But if you need the roster spot, though, I mean, I can't blame you. It's really rough out there. It's choppy waters, and I don't think it's happening anytime soon. But hey, all these injuries happened this week, young and old guys, so who knows? Yeah,
and then Darren McFadden, he stayed healthy all 16 games, only to break his elbow when he dropped his iPhone because he couldn't buy a new one. Guys, we're done with the running backs. Let's move on to wide receiver. And honestly, it's a really boring wide receiver week. We could start. We could start right where we left off, actually, with the Jets. Let's talk about Quincy Enunwa. I want to hear all your guys' takes on him, just because for me, I'll start it by saying that I'm not paying a whole lot for him unless I hear that Brandon Marshall's out for any time at all. Yeah. But for me, I'm having a hard time thinking that the Jets support not only Matt Forte, who's used in the passing game, but Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall. And now we add Quincy Enunwa. I'm thinking he's more of like a dynasty buy right now because you got Decker and Marshall. They're getting older. I get it. He looks good. But do you guys have the same concerns I do? Nathan, let's start with you.
I have those concerns, but I do like him if there's any wide receiver that I'm picking up this week if I need another wide receiver on my roster. I think he's someone where, while I typically don't always like third wide receivers on a team, the Jets are a team that love to use 3 wide receiver, 4 wide receiver sets. So he's still on the field plenty, especially if Brandon Marshall does end up missing time. I don't even know how he got back in the game when he did get hurt. But he's someone who's looked good in the 2 games so far this year. So Dynasty is probably a better buy, but I think if the defenses are worrying about Marshall and Forte and Decker, then that leaves an Unwa to not be as covered as well or against as good of people. So he'll have more favorable matchups in the game. So I think he's someone that you can have on your roster, and against good enough matchups where the cornerbacks aren't going to be very good, he's someone you can play.
Yeah, he's mixing. Him and Decker are sharing time in the slot. They're kind of alternating there, inside, outside. So it's definitely, he looks like a talented player. Daniel, what's your take on Anunwa?
I mean, I don't want to use him this week unless I'm in a bind or Marshall's out. But I think this harkens back to your preseason one injury away piece about receivers. He's a wide receiver handcuff. And I think if you can stash someone like that, either one of Decker or Marshall goes down, and Noon was immediately a wide receiver 2, maybe a 3, but either way, I think he's the kind of guy you want to have on your bench and don't want to use him unless you're in a bind. But, God, have him on your roster somewhere if you can afford it.
There you go. I like it. The wide receiver handcuff. Brandon.
I picked him up a lot of places, mostly because they don't have a tight end. I mean, like, on normal teams, they don't care. They don't. So to me, and they do the 3 wide receiver set instead, and then they have Matt Forte, and to them, that's their way of making up for any sort of tight end production that could possibly happen on that team. So I just think that's the way their offense goes. They do those 3 wide receiver sets, an exorbitant amount of times. And I'm a little worried about Marshall's knee. I'm a little worried. Eric Decker's missed time in the past too. So I think they love this guy, and I think that they love that they have 3 people that they can trust. By the way, very impressive that Fitzgerald has that kind of chemistry with him, based on the fact that he had a shortened preseason time with the team, and it seemed like he was a little rusty in general with everybody. So I'm actually quite impressed. I don't think this is a fluke. I don't want to start him necessarily. I'm hoping I have better options right now, but certainly he's a bye week, right? I mean, he's perfect.
You know what that's crazy is that they don't use the tight end. Looking back at last year's numbers, they targeted the tight end position 29 times, but I want you to know that 8 of those included Quincy Anunwa, who we had lined up as a tight end in PFF. So they actually only targeted their tight ends 21 times last year. 2 times they targeted the tight end in 2016, despite all these pass attempts. So you're right. They don't use the tight end, so that could funnel into the number 3 wide receiver. I like it. One player we talked about last week, and we said we don't know who's who in San Diego. I think we got a little bit more clarity on the situation, though I'm a little bit – I think it was great game planning on San Diego's part. They kind of flipped the roles. Travis Benjamin had a 2.9 average depth of target in week 1. And then it jumped all the way up to 16.6 in week 2. That's the role that we thought he was going to have. And then Tyrell Williams kind of dipped down into that, that Keenan Allen area of the field. So it seems like he might be the Keenan Allen replacement there. Brandon, what's your take on Tyrell Williams? Are you comfortable now with him if he's still available? Because a lot of people picked him up. But if he's still available, is he would you try and get him over all of the running backs?
Yeah, I think so. Man, I feel for the San Diego Chargers. They lose Keenan Allen week 1, Danny Woodhead week 2. They have to adjust on the fly again. So his role could change again. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of the last men standing. So you have to consider that. But, certainly this team is going to have to do some shape shifting because everything has been thrown off now. And not having Danny Woodhead is a huge blow. I mean, he played such a multifaceted role. There is no one that's going to replace him. Literally no one. So, Melvin Gordon owners are, today saying, wow, I have a must start. But as far as the wide receivers are concerned, someone's also going to have to pick up the Danny Woodhead slack. And I think that's probably going to be Tyrell Williams. Mm-hmm. It looks like he's going to be involved. But, there are a lot of good wide receivers out there. A lot of these rookies are coming through. There are a lot of people that I really enjoy. So I'd like to say I have room on my roster, but I'm not quite sure I do.
Yeah, and then we have the trickle-down effect. Kenneth Farrow, Andre Williams is now going to be actually active on game day. I thought we were done with the Andre Williams thing, but apparently
never.
No, apparently not. Daniel, what's your take on the San Diego wide receiving core? Do you feel comfortable? Honestly, we could even say now, if you are able to get Williams, are you comfortable starting him?
No, maybe this week, but honestly, who I find interesting there and this is silly as can be, but Griff Whalen,
They just signed
I
him,
can
right?
see Griff Whalen. They just signed him, and I can see him filling in the Woodhead short pass role.
Yeah.
It's kind of what he's made for. And if somebody else who's not Tyrell Williams is taking those passes, I don't know if there's going to be enough for Williams. I like him. I would stash him to see how it goes, but I think Whalen's going to have a presence in this offense. And beyond that, I think that limits you to just Travis Benjamin out of the receivers.
Yeah, no, well, Travis Benjamin is going to be the most trustworthy one, I think, on a weekly basis. Though he might be a little bit boomer bust depending on what that average depth of target does again this week. Who knows? Because the way it changed so much week over week, they might be using him all over the field. And in that case, Benjamin's going to be very valuable. Nathan, what do you think about the San Diego wide receiving core? Are you comfortable starting Williams?
I'm not comfortable starting Williams yet. I think he will see a few more targets, but he's someone where this past week his fantasy numbers look good, but he had a 44-yard touchdown where Paul Posluszny was the guy covering him. So I don't think that's something that'll necessarily carry on from future weeks, since he'll see better coverage than that. So I'm not trusting him yet. I think he will see more targets, but I think other players that you guys have mentioned will also see targets as well. So Williams, he'll see some points, but not enough that you want to start him.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is like this week I wanted to make sure we talked about Williams because the wide receiver position, there really wasn't much going on there to take outside of Enunwa. There were a few performances here and there, but none really that stand out to me as somebody's a must add. But on the tight end side, there's a few more names that have popped up out there.
Hold on, Mike. Hold on. I have a must add that I know you're going to get with me on. That's Philip Dorsett, because he's only owned in 42%, at least in Yahoo. And we already have Moncrief as a question mark. If Dorsett is available in any of your leagues, he needs to be added immediately.
I actually thought that he might be owned in most leagues, but that if it's only 42%, that might be an oversight on my part. I think a lot of people dropped him, but he was in that article, Daniel, that you were talking about, the wide receiver handcuffs. And Philip Dorsett, It was a tough matchup for him. It was going to be tough against Talib. He lines up on Talib's side of the field more often than not. It was going to be tough for him last week. That's why people last week saying, there's the Andrew Luck that we remember. Guys, they were playing the Broncos. I don't know what we expected out of Andrew Luck. The offensive line they were going to allow pressure onto him. He was going to be hurried. It was going to be a bad game. We knew that. But Philip Dorsett, 100%. If he's out there, I would add him over Quincy Enunwa. I really would. I think Philip Dorsett, if he's placed into this offense, ideally, he was more of T.Y. Hilton's handcuff, but if Moncrief is out, he's going to be in the starting lineup, 2 wide receiver sets, 2 little speed demons on the outside. But the tight end position is one where I want to make sure that we touch on because there's a couple names out there that, one that's making his way back into our lives, and that's Dennis Pitta. After seeing 4 targets in week 1, he ran up to 11 targets in week 2. Obviously, part of that was in comeback mode, but Dennis Pitta is clearly the tight end 1 in Baltimore. Brandon, should we let him back into our lives or should we just forget that he ever happened?
Yeah, I think you have to because the tight end position is a little touch and go right now. So I definitely think that he's someone you need to add. Also, we start bye weeks and I think it's week 4, right, this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's only, a week after this week. So you might have some issues. Also, all of you Gronk owners still crying. I don't think they're going to bring Gronk back with a rookie quarterback on a short week. Maybe, but I highly, highly doubt it. So I know that you've been using someone else, but maybe that person hasn't been working out. And certainly Dennis Pitta is worth a stash.
Speaking of the Patriots, they've started 2-0. And they're going to get Brady back in a couple of weeks. They've done this without Gronk, without Brady. It's just kind of amazing to me what New England has done during this time. But Daniel, Nathan, you guys, let's hear what you guys have to say on Dennis Pitta and whether or not, if there's room for him, because obviously we talked about it. There's a lot of options in that Baltimore passing game. Was this just one week where the matchup just happened to go his right way?
Probably. But even if it is, who cares? What do you have to lose right now at tight end? Out of the top 15 tight ends right now, I'm looking at the list. Olsen, Julius Thomas, Jordan Reed, Delaney Walker are up there. But then the rest of the list, Jacob Tamme, Austin Hooper, Kyle Rudolph. Tight end is garbage right now. You probably don't have a tight end you're happy with. Might as well give a shot on Pitta and see what happens. He's owned in 11% of leagues. It's worth a chance.
Yeah, I've had people asking me if they should drop Dwayne Allen, Kobe Fleener, and others for him. I think that's kind of crazy, but maybe crazy is what we need, right? Right, Nathan?
Yeah, he's someone where in Baltimore, like I wouldn't be surprised if Kamar Aiken takes more wide receiver snaps or whatever happens at running back. But he's the only one of the skill players where I'm like, okay, I'm fairly sure he'll have that kind of role going forward. He might not see as many targets, and probably the biggest concern I have with the targets is it was almost all a bunch of really short passes. So there are other tight ends out there who get more involved in some of the intermediate routes where Peta was just a bunch of short routes, but he's someone where if you want someone who can consistently get you some yards, go with him. But if you want more high upside, high risk, he might not be the guy for you.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, that's the thing is, with all the unsurety at tight end, I think that it's going to flow into Pitta too. I mean, in week 1, he wasn't anything big, and then he had one big week, and the tight end position is just so frustrating this year. So, like, to this point, as you mentioned, Daniel, the leaderboards there are just scary. I was huge on Delaney Walker last week, and I'm glad it panned out because I told a lot of people to calm down. He was dropped in some leagues, which was just crazy to me.
What?
Yeah, no, I kid you not. People were telling me that Delaney Walker was dropped in their league, or that they were being offered trades basically with Delaney Walker was nothing. He cost nothing. Because people were worried about his age, they were worried about Tajay Sharp, Rashard Matthews, all this, the running backs there, that he was kind of being funneled out of the offense. I think they need to work the offense through him. That's what they need to do. But one name...
People are crazy.
I agree. Brendan, I also think people are crazy if they want to add Jacob Tamme. Are you with me?
I mean, there are some desperate Gronk owners out there, so I can't blame them. It's desperate times, but certainly I'm not like, actually my sister on our show like joked around. She was like, I would let Jacob Tamme watch my kids, but I don't want him on my fantasy team. I mean, he's just not, no. But hey, I'd rather have Vance McDonald. I think he's one of the only players that they have in San Francisco. I know that sounds crazy. It'll be boom or bust, but I mean, he's a guy. I'd definitely rather have Jesse James. Again, he finally got in the end zone, but the guy is a target monster. Eric Ebron, legit, you guys, he's there. And they do short passes in Detroit. I don't know how many times I need to say this. Short passes, more short passes. So, Eric Ebron's perfect for that. And I just think they're just better players. And you know what? Once Jason Witten and Travis Kelce get in the end zone, they both have over 100 yards so far this season. It's not like they've been, slumping, really. I mean, they just haven't been able to score. So, it's only 2 games, recency bias. But, Atlanta's offense is so frustrating to me right now. I don't even know if I can get into it because we're towards the end of the show. But, Jacob Tamme is not my favorite.
Well, that's the thing. Matt Ryan's thrown for over 300 yards in back-to-back weeks. One matchup was against the Saints. The other one was against the Raiders, which was more impressive to me. So I don't know. This Falcons offense, maybe they turned a corner in the passing game. Maybe the addition of Mohamed Sanu instead of Roddy White has helped spread things out a little bit because I think at this point in his career, he's more of a threat. Austin Hooper is making some plays when he gets a chance. I think eventually Austin Hooper's got to overtake Jacob Tamme. So for me, I don't add Tamme anywhere. No, I don't care how desperate I am. Vance McDonald, as you mentioned, I'll take the splash play any day. But Daniel and Nathan, I just want you guys, if there's any player you want to talk about that maybe we haven't so far, any big takeaways from week 2, what are some things to expect? Give me your hot takes here at the end of the show.
Well, there's one person that I've seen as a waiver target by some people who I'm not sold on yet, and that's Victor Cruz of the Giants. I know he saw a lot of playing time this week. I know he had his 4 catches, 91 yards, but I think he's someone who's not going to see enough targets going forward. We'll see better coverage than what the Saints gave him going forward. I don't think the Giants' offense will continue at the high pace that they've been going at. So while others have been saying Cruz is someone that should be added, I'm not sold on him yet.
I am with you on that one. I do believe Odell Beckham finally. The worry for me is with Odell Beckham, it's him getting into the slot more. Last year he played almost a quarter of his snaps in the slot. He's doing it a little bit less and less and less. They have to create mismatches for Odell Beckham. I mean, I know what they're doing kind of has worked, but to score.
Not really.
Well, I mean, last
you only
week
score 1 offensive touchdown against the Saints. Not working. Sorry.
That's true. Well, everything else was there except for the touchdowns. Actually, Odell Beckham dropped a touchdown.
I know, but come on.
I know it was a frustrating game to say the least. Daniel, do you have any hot takes before we get out of here?
One that I want to go back to this but you said earlier you were making fun of people for dropping Fleener for Pitta. I'm fine with that trade, that transaction. I think Fleener, he'll have moments. He'll have a touchdown. He'll probably have a 2-touchdown game at some point this year. But I think by and large, this is what he is. He's not a very good football player. I know Brandon's with me on this, but he's all of the preseason hype confused the heck out of me, and I would be fine dropping him for anybody I think is going to produce.
I think they're trying to force Fleener the ball right now. I think that there's been no chemistry between him and Breeze, and I was a Fleener supporter. I will raise my hand and say that yes, I was a Fleener supporter. And honestly, I haven't given up on him yet. I mean, the tight end position, as we talked about, it's been extremely volatile. He saw, I want to say it was 8 targets this week from Drew Brees, and when you start seeing those targets, they're going to eventually lead to something. Yes, is he going to be up and down? What tight end that is not named Rob Gronkowski, Greg Olsen, those guys? Which one isn't? Even Travis Kelce this week did little to nothing in a semi-decent matchup. So the tight end positions, it's a cluster. I think you kind of have to ride it out until we see more and more of a sample. But Pitta, it was one good week. That's why I'm not ready to just say anoint him as a starting tight end yet. But I get it. I understand it. I could be wrong on Fleener. That's mine. But guys, thank you as always for joining us. This was another fun episode. I think I speak on behalf of all of us that we had a blast hanging out with you guys. Hopefully you'll be here next week. We're going to be here with you guys every single week covering which waiver wire additions to make, which ones not to. Brandon's going to talk about Ryan Tannehill, how bad he is, like on every show.
He's just inconsistent.
I looked at it.
You can't do it. I was right.
I looked at, hold on a second. So basically when he's facing a top 16 defense, he averages 18.7 fantasy points per game. When he faces a bottom 16, it's 19.4. So there's really not that much difference. Like it should be a lot more in the games where he's facing a bottom 16, but he doesn't really take advantage of those matchups is what Brandon was getting at. So it makes sense. But guys, thank you as always for joining us. And until next time, lights out.